Welcome to the Hindu Daily. Our deep dive today starts with a really important editorial. It brings to light a kind of silent challenge right at the core of India's democracy. It basically argues that the system is, well, failing the migrant citizen in a pretty profound way.
Okay.
We're talking about this shocking mass deletion. Nearly 3.5 million people wiped off the electoral rolls in Bihar. That's 4.4% of their total voters.
Wow, 3.5 million. That's huge.
Yeah, and it's because they weren't home during these house-to-house checks. So now they can't vote where they work, obviously, but they can't vote back home either.
Right, and this really brings up that concept of the sedentary citizen, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Our whole electoral setup, the infrastructure, it's designed for people who stay put.
Exactly.
We need stable proof of residence. You need to be there for verification. But migrant workers, they're often in rented rooms, maybe construction sites, slums. Getting that consistent proof is, well, it's incredibly hard for them.
So it's a built-in barrier almost.
It really is,
Yeah.
a systemic one.
And then you've got regionalism sort of making it worse. Migrants sometimes get viewed suspiciously, don't they? Like job stealers or even political threats in the places they move to.
Definitely. There can be real resistance to letting them register and vote in these host states. People worry it'll change election results.
So they end up completely stuck, can't register where they are, and now they're being actively removed from the rolls back home.
Yeah, it's a double whammy.
Yep.
And, there's a study back in 2015 by TIS.
Oh, right. The Tata Institute of Social Sciences.
That's the one. They identified what they called a triple burden, stopping migrants from voting. You've got the administrative hurdles we just talked about, then digital literacy makes online processes difficult, and just general social exclusion.
So it's not just one thing.
Not at all. And they found a clear link. States with more people migrating out tended to have lower voter turnout. So this initiative in Bihar, the Special Intensive Revision, or SR, which is meant to clean up the rolls, it's actually making things worse for migrants. It's widening that democratic deficit.
The numbers really drive it home. Bihar's average turnout over the last 4 assembly elections, just 53.2%.
Wow, that's low.
It's the lowest among major states. Compare that to Gujarat, 66.4%, or Karnataka, 70.7%. And mobile location data shows something like 7 million people leaving Bihar each year in circular migration patterns.
7 million.
Yeah, about 4.8 million are seasonal migrants, and maybe 2.7 million come back for big festivals like Durga Puja or Diwali. Imagine coming home for Diwali and finding you can't vote anymore because your name's just gone.
That's incredibly frustrating. And it reminds me of the One Nation, One Ration Card scheme, too.
How so?
Well, it was launched in 2019, meant to make rations portable, but as of May this year, only about 3.3 lakh households had actually used the portability feature.
That's a tiny fraction.
Exactly. Migrants tend to hold on to their original documents, their voter IDs from home. It's not because they don't care about voting. It's often fear. Fear of losing benefits they already have, and a sense that they aren't really secure or accepted in the new place.
So they have this kind of dual belonging, economic life in one place, political identity tied to another.
Right. And the editorial suggests this dual belonging is now almost being demonized by these administrative processes.
And there's another layer, too, isn't there, around the India-Nepal border?
Yes, that's a really important point. The whole Roti Beti Ka Rishta tradition, the cross-border family, ties across that 1,751-kilometer open border. New rules about documentation, stricter interpretations of citizenship. They're threatening the legal status and therefore the voting rights of many people, particularly women. It makes the whole disenfranchisement issue, as the article puts it, gendered and xenophobic as well.
So what are the potential fixes being suggested?
Well, the main call is for more flexible systems.
Yeah.
Portable voter IDs, maybe mobile registration options. Crucially, the Election Commission needs to stop these blanket deletions just based on absence.
Okay.
And adopt proper cross-verification. Check with the destination state roles before removing someone. Also, empowering local bodies like panchayats and civil society groups to help with outreach.
And maybe learning from other states?
Yes, replicating something like the Kerala model of migration surveys in states like BR and UP, where migration is really high. Without these changes, we risk what the editorial calls the largest silent voter purge, affecting some of the country's poorest, hardest working citizens. It's a stark reminder, really, of how systems designed without considering everyone can unintentionally exclude millions.
Okay, shifting gears now. From those systemic challenges for voters, let's look at another really significant debate that's shaping India's future. This time it's about energy, specifically the laws around nuclear power.
Right.
Parliament's apparently going to debate some proposed changes to two key laws. The Civil Liability for Nuclear Damages Act, or CLNDA, from 2010, and the older Atomic Energy Act from 1962.
Yes, and this is potentially quite a big deal. The main goals seem to be twofold. First, to tackle this issue of supplier liability, which has been described as vexatious, basically, a major sticking point for foreign companies.
Okay.
And second, crucially, to allow private companies to actually get involved in generating nuclear power.
Right. So maybe some background on that 2010 law.
Sure. The CLNDA was passed back when the UPA government was in power. It led to major clashes with the opposition. The BJP and the left parties were strongly against parts of it. Remember, this was in the context of things like the Bhopal gas tragedy, the big oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, and the Fukushima nuclear disaster.
Ah, yes. High-profile incidents.
Exactly. So the opposition really pushed hard to increase the liability, the compensation burden, placed on the suppliers of nuclear equipment, not just the operators. And the effect was, well, Western suppliers basically said no thanks. The law for them was pretty much dead on arrival. It scared them off.
I see. And there was an earlier debate, too, about the Atomic Energy Act itself.
That's right. Back around 2007, there was talk about letting the private sector in, even then. The government at the time had suggested they were looking at reviewing the AEA. Now, both that issue, private participation, and the liability issue are back on the table together.
So it feels like a potentially major policy shift is being considered.
It certainly seems that way. And predictably, there's already pushback. Just this February, the Congress Party voiced strong objections to the proposed amendments.
What were their main concerns?
They argued it would weaken supplier accountability, basically letting them off the hook. They said it increases the risk for India domestically, protects the equipment makers, and unfairly favors big international firms, specifically mentioning French and U.S. companies. They even suggested it was about appeasing foreign interests.
Politics playing out as expected, perhaps.
Perhaps. It's worth remembering, though, that back in 2010, the then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh defended the original CLNDA, and he specifically dismissed claims that its timing was just to coincide with a visit by President Obama.
Right, so this debate is happening while India has some pretty big ambitions for nuclear power, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Right now, nuclear power is only about 3% of our total electricity generation. We have about 8.8 gigawatts of installed capacity from 24 reactors.
Which is way off the old target, I remember. Wasn't it supposed to be 10 GW by the year 2000?
It was, yes. A missed target. But the new goals are much, much bigger. They're aiming for 22.48 gigawatts by 2031-32, and then a huge jump to 100 gigawatts by 2047.
100 GW, that's a massive increase.
It is. It clearly positions nuclear as a major part of India's future energy plans.
Now, the article mentions this pattern of about turns by political parties on big issues.
Yes, it's an interesting observation. The piece points to examples like the Patents Act, allowing more foreign direct investment in insurance, even the land border agreement with Bangladesh. In several cases, parties that strongly opposed something while in opposition eventually supported it, or something similar when in government, often citing national interest.
So the question is, will we see that happen here with nuclear law reform?
That's the implication. Given the strategic importance of energy security, it's certainly possible.
Well, it definitely highlights the need for a proper debate, doesn't it? Especially with things like small modular reactors coming up and the huge ongoing issue of nuclear waste disposal. These have really long-term consequences.
Absolutely. A thorough, well-informed discussion is critical. And the opinion piece concludes by suggesting the opposition should really play a constructive role in this. It quotes an old remark, something like, "A change of sides should not result in a change of stand." It really makes you think about how often these critical national issues eventually seem to push past the immediate political arguments, doesn't it?
It does. Okay, let's move from energy policy to the microscopic world. We're diving into the science section now, looking at a particularly nasty bug, Pseudomonas aeruginosa.
Ah, yes, a very challenging bacterium.
It's described as a deadly opportunistic pathogen. It causes really serious secondary infections, especially in burn victims, people with urinary catheters, and it can cause a nasty eye infection called keratitis.
And notoriously difficult to treat because it's resistant to so many antibiotics. That's why understanding what makes it so dangerous, its lethality, is really vital.
Right. The article starts with a famous quote from Jacques Monod.
What is true for Escherichia coli is true for the elephant. Yes, the idea that fundamental biological processes are often conserved across different life forms. It's a cornerstone of molecular biology.
But then it pivots slightly. It says even identical bacterial cells aren't always, well, identical in their behavior.
Exactly. That's the fascinating concept of biostability. Even in a colony of genetically identical bacteria, individual cells can express the same gene at vastly different levels. One cell might be making lots of protein, its neighbor hardly any. And amazingly, this on or off state can sometimes be passed down epigenetically when the cell divides.
So it's like a bet hedging strategy.
Precisely. For single-celled organisms living in environments that change unpredictably, having this kind of variation within the population can be a powerful survival strategy. Some cells are ready for one condition, others for another.
And this new study from the Helmholtz Center in Germany found that a specific gene in P. aeruginosa called GlpD shows this bistability.
That's the key finding. And it's significant because how much GlpD is expressed seems to be directly linked to how pathogenic, how dangerous this bacterium is.
Okay, just to quickly recap gene expression, that's when the information in a gene gets used to make RNA and then usually a protein, right?
Correct. Genes make RNA transcripts, which are like the instructions, and those are often translated into proteins, the workhorses of the cell.
And the article mentions legs and HGs.
Right. Low-expression genes, legs, make just a few RNA transcripts, while high-expression genes, HEGs, make many, many more, potentially thousands of times more. Usually, HEGs are pretty consistent in how much they make.
But GLPD wasn't.
Exactly. Even though GLPD is generally a high-expression gene in P. aeruginosa, the researchers noticed unusually large variations in the number of its transcripts between individual cells. That was the big clue suggesting it might be beast-lethal.
So how did they test this? The experiment sounds quite clever.
It really was. They essentially tagged the system. They fused the part of the DNA that controls the GLPD gene with another gene that produces green fluorescent protein, GFP.
Ah, so the cells would glow green when GLPD was active.
Precisely. And what they saw was really interesting. Only a small percentage of the bacteria lit up initially, and they stayed on. But when an on cell divided, only one of the two daughter cells inherited the on state and kept glowing.
Only one. That's odd.
It is. It suggests an active mechanism is needed to maintain the on state. They also saw some off cells randomly flicking on, and importantly, if they added glycerol to the environment, which is something P. aeruginosa uses the GLPD gene product to break down more cells, switch to the on glowing state.
Okay, so the environment matters, but how does this link back to infection?
That's where the moth larva test came in. They used Galleria melanella larvae, which are a standard model system for studying bacterial infections.
Right.
And the result was quite stark. They compared normal P. aeruginosa with bacteria where they had specifically removed the GLPD gene. The ones without GLPD were significantly less able to kill the larvae.
So GLPD is definitely involved in making the bacteria dangerous.
It strongly confirms that link. And they did one more experiment with mouse immune cells, macrophages.
What happened there?
They found that bacteria that actually came into contact with these immune cells started to glow more brightly, meaning GLPD expression went up when the bacteria sensed the immune system.
Wow. So the immune system might actually trigger the bacteria to become more virulent.
That seems to be the implication. The researchers think this variability, this bistability in GLPD, is a key part of its success as an opportunistic pathogen. It allows a few cells to maybe lie low and then switch on when they encounter the host's defenses or find the right conditions, enabling even a small initial group to start a serious infection.
What an exciting part is.
The potential payoff. If you could develop a drug that specifically targets this GLPD variability, maybe forcing it into the off state or preventing the switch, you might be able to stop P. aeruginosa from being the absolute scourge it currently is in hospitals. It opens up a whole new avenue for treatment.
That's fascinating. Okay, from the microscopic to the cosmic, let's talk about India's space program. We've seen some incredible achievements lately. Chandrayaan-3's landing, the upcoming Gaganyaan mission, plans for the Harat and Antariksh station.
Truly exciting times for Indian space exploration.
And with National Space Day coming up on August 23rd, there's a lot of buzz. But the article highlights a missing piece. It says the essential component of the legal framework is still grounded.
Yes, that's a crucial point. While the missions are literally taking off, the underlying legal structure needs to catch up to support the growing ambitions, especially with more private players getting involved.
So what's the foundation globally?
It starts with the Outer Space Treaty of 1967. That treaty basically says space belongs to everyone, province of all mankind. No country can claim ownership of the moon or planets. And importantly, it makes states responsible for all national space activities, whether they're governmental or carried out by private companies.
But treaties aren't enough on their own.
Exactly. They aren't self-executing. As Arti Halameini from the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs points out, it's national laws, domestic legislation, that actually translate those international principles into concrete rules and regulations for a country's own space activities. That's how you ensure safety, sustainability, and compliance.
And India has been working on this incrementally.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Oh,
It's been a methodical approach. We've seen things like the Catalog of Indian Standards for the Space Industry, the overall Indian space policy was released, and InSpace has put out detailed norms, guidelines, and procedures. These are all important building blocks.
technical standards, policy directions.
Right, but what's still pending, according to the article, is the second main component, the big overarching regulatory framework, a comprehensive space activities law that takes those outer space treaty obligations and spells them out in detailed Indian law.
And why is that so important now?
Because without that statutory backing, bodies like InSpace, which is meant to authorize and regulate private space activities, operate in a slightly gray area. Their decisions could potentially be challenged legally. It creates uncertainty, especially for businesses looking to invest.
What are the specific things the industry is looking for in this law? The article quotes GlpD Captain T.H. Anand Rao from the Indian Space Association.
Yes, he lays out several key priorities. First and foremost, giving InSpace itself a proper statutory basis, making it a legally empowered authority.
Makes sense.
Then, clear rules for licensing. What qualifications do you need? What's the process? How long will it take? What are the fees? Predictability is key to avoid delays that kill startups.
Okay. What else?
Addressing the complexity of dual-use technologies, things that have both civilian and military applications. Right now, companies might need clearances from multiple ministries, which is cumbersome. Clearer foreign direct investment rules are also needed, for example, confirming 100% FDI is allowed automatically for making satellite components.
Insurance seems like a big one for startups.
Absolutely crucial. Space is inherently risky. Affordable insurance frameworks are vital. And protecting intellectual property rights without the government having excessive control is another major point.
So quite a comprehensive list.
It is, and the article also mentions other needs like mandatory accident investigation processes, rules for managing space debris, a growing problem, unified frameworks for handling space data and communications, and maybe an independent body to handle appeals against regulatory decisions.
It sounds like without this law, there's a risk of slowing down the momentum.
That's the concern. If the legal framework isn't clear and supportive, talent and investment might just go elsewhere, to countries that have already put comprehensive space laws in place. India's technical achievements are world-class, but this legal framework is like the essential launchpad infrastructure needed to really fuel the next stage of growth, especially in the commercial sector.
Right. Let's move to our next piece from the text and context section. This one tackles the controversy around electoral rolls, specifically Rahul Gandhi's call for machine-readable versions amidst claims of vote theft. So what does machine-readable actually mean in this context, and why is it such a point of contention?
Okay, so the way electoral rolls are typically shared now is as image PDF files. Think of them like scanned pictures of the pages or sometimes just physical printouts.
Right, like a photograph of the text.
Exactly. And trying to search or analyze text in an image file is, well, it's incredibly difficult and time-consuming. The article gives a striking example from Bengaluru.
The Mahadevapura one.
Yes. A team manually reviewing the image-based rolls managed to find nearly 12,000 duplicate entries. 12,000. That took immense human effort.
Wow. So machine-readable means something different.
Yes. A machine-readable roll would typically be a text PDF. In this format, the text is actual text that a computer can recognize, index, and search through automatically.
Ah, so you could just run a program to find duplicates.
Precisely. Detecting potential duplicates or other anomalies becomes vastly easier and faster. People like PG Bhatt have done work showing how effective this can be when they've had access to such formats.
So if it makes verification easier, why did the Election Commission stop providing them in this format?
Well, the reason given, according to former Chief Election Commissioner O.P. Rawat, was primarily about privacy and security. The concern was that making entire rolls easily searchable could allow foreign entities or others to easily access lists of full names and addresses of voters across the country.
I see. A potential data privacy risk.
That was the argument. And it's worth noting, the Supreme Court looked at this in 2018 in a case called Kamal Nath versus Election Commission of India. The court actually sided with the EC, refusing to force them to provide machine-readable rolls. They basically said that petitioners could use OCR optical character recognition technology themselves if they wanted to convert the images to text.
Okay, OCR. That sounds like a solution, maybe.
In theory, yes. OCR technology has been around for decades. But the problem is scale and resources. We're talking about voter rolls for the entire country. That's over 6 crore pages.
6 crore, that's 60 million pages.
Exactly. Running OCR on that volume is incredibly resource intensive. The article estimates it could cost around $40,000 just to process one summary revision list. Plus, the rolls are often broken down into hundreds of smaller parts for each constituency, which complicates the process further. It's not a simple task for parties or citizen groups to undertake accurately.
So it's technically possible, but practically very difficult and expensive.
That's the challenge. And this leads to the core argument for transparency, put forward by activists like Srinivas Kodali. He acknowledges the privacy risks, but argues that given recent questions about the EC's processes, transparency might be paramount right now.
His point being?
Well, he essentially asks, if political parties with significant resources likely already have the capability to OCR these rolls anyway, why not just make the machine-readable versions public for everyone? Level the playing field for scrutiny.
That's a provocative question.
It really is. It highlights that fundamental tension between ensuring privacy and security on one hand and enabling genuine, widespread public scrutiny of the electoral process on the other. This whole debate about machine-readable rolls isn't just a technical squabble. It's really about trust, transparency, and the tools citizens and parties have to verify the integrity of something as fundamental as the voter list.
Okay, for our final deep dive today, let's look at a piece of technology that most of us use every single day, probably without even thinking about it. The charge-coupled device, or CCD. The article calls it a remarkable electronic component that revolutionized digital imaging.
It absolutely did. It's the heart of so many cameras and imaging systems. Basically, it's the thing that turns light into an electrical signal that can then become a digital picture.
So what exactly is a CCD?
Okay, think of it as a tiny specialized computer chip. It's an integrated circuit covered in an array, like a grid, of extremely small, light-sensitive areas called pixels.
Pixels, right, like on my phone screen, but capturing light instead of showing it.
Exactly. Each pixel acts like a tiny light bucket, collecting photons, particles of light that fall on it. And crucially, it converts the number of photons it collects into a proportional amount of electrical charge. More light means more charge.
So it makes an electrical map of the light pattern.
That's a great way to put it. A grid where every little square captures light and turns it into a specific electric signal strength.
And where did this invention come from?
It's a fascinating story from Bell Labs back in 1969. Two scientists, Willard Boyle and George Smith, were actually trying to develop new types of computer memory.
Got cameras.
Not initially. But during a brainstorming session, they hit upon this idea of charge coupling, moving tiny packets of electrical charge across the surface of a semiconductor chip in a controlled way. They quickly realized this could be used for imaging, not just memory.
And that led to a Nobel Prize, didn't it?
It did, much later, in 2009, for physics. Their insight was fundamental. Companies like Fairchild Semiconductor and Sony then really ran with the idea, developing practical CCDs that could be mass-produced.
So how does the charge coupling part actually work to get an image out?
Okay, so the process relies on the photoelectric effect. When light photons hit the semiconductor material under a pixel, they generate electrons. The brighter the light, the more electrons are generated in that pixel's bucket.
Got it. Light makes electrons.
Right. Then comes the coupling, or transfer part. By applying carefully timed voltage pulses to tiny electrodes layered over the pixels, the chip can systematically shift these packets of electrons, pixel by pixel, across the entire grid, row by row.
Like passing buckets of water down a line.
That's a perfect analogy, a highly precise electronic bucket brigade. The charge packets are moved sequentially to a special section called the readout register at the edge of the chip.
And then?
There, the amount of charge in each packet is measured, converted into a voltage signal, amplified because the signals are initially very small, and then digitized, turned into numerical values that a computer can store and process as a digital image.
It sounds incredibly elegant, actually.
It really is.
Yeah.
And its impact has been immense. Think about the applications.
Digital cameras, obviously. That completely changed photography.
Completely. Replacing film, allowing instant viewing, editing, digital storage. It democratized photography. But also, think about CCTV cameras for security. Millions of those use CCDs, or related CMOS sensors.
What about beyond consumer stuff?
Huge impact in medicine. High-resolution X-ray imaging, CT scanners, the tiny cameras used in endoscopy procedures, many rely on CCDs for the detailed images doctors need for diagnosis. And in science labs, they're in sophisticated microscopes, spectrometers for analyzing light, even particle detectors.
And astronomy, the article mentioned.
Absolutely transformative for astronomy. CCDs became the gold standard. They are vastly more sensitive to faint light than old photographic plates. Telescopes equipped with CCDs could suddenly see much fainter, much more distant objects with incredible accuracy.
So they really expanded our view of the universe.
Massively. Discovering distant galaxies, finding planets around other stars, exoplanets, studying supernovae. So much of modern astronomy relies on the sensitivity and precision of CCDs. It's quite profound when you think about it, this journey from a concept for computer memory to becoming essentially the electronic eyes that let us see both the microscopic world and the farthest reaches of the cosmos. It really underscores how foundational inventions can fundamentally change how we perceive and interact with everything around us.
Thank you for listening. If today's episode gave you something useful, consider following us on Spotify so you're the first to hear the next one. You can give suggestions by contacting on Twitter handle given in the episode description. As always, we are eager to hear what our listeners want to be informed about. We wish you a great day.